Hey folks, I know we've kind of been missing for a little bit of time here on the Forge and Brains podcast, but wanted to let you guys know that we are back. We've just been very busy between Riley and I's lives, and everyone that we've been trying to get on as guests as well been busy. Just wanted to say thank you to our sponsors, World Championship Blacksmiths, Yukon Forge, Farrier Box, and Wellshod for sticking with us and continuing to show their support amongst the show and for you guys. I'm sure a lot of you guys are fixing to be headed on your way to Madison, Wisconsin for the season opener for the WCB, and I wanted to try to get this episode out for you guys that are traveling and listen to all the cool things that we had with our guest, Tyson Clark. He's actually going to be in Madison, Wisconsin, and if you see him and if you listen to this, tell him what's up. We thank everybody for listening and tuning into the show and continue to show their support, and we appreciate that here at Forge and Brains Podcast. So good luck to everybody that's competing this weekend, and hopefully you can help reach those goals that you've set for yourself, and hopefully that hard work pays off. So lo and behold, let's get into this episode. We'll first talk about our fine sponsor, World Championship Blacksmiths, and then we'll listen to what Tyson Clark had to share with us. Thanks, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about the fine folks from World Championship Blacksmiths. They're about to kick off another season, opening up in Madison, Wisconsin for another year. There's always something that's magical about the first contest of the year and looking where everybody sets up and stands and trying to hopefully make it to the next step in their life of progression. The sole focus is so you can become better, and putting yourself in that environment will push you to an area that you didn't even know you had within yourself. The WCB is about holding on to tried and true methods of trimming, shoemaking, and most of all, fit. The goal is always to have the horse better off in the end. The farrier to become efficient and skilled to whatever comes to their way that they can tackle. They're doing more than just putting on horseshoeing competitions. They're creating a community amongst us of the greatest hardworking folks that'll step up and help you along the way. The WCB is putting on the greatest horseshoeing contests in the world, and we personally believe here at Forge and Brains Podcast that it's important to test yourself and try to become better every day. So it's awesome to have the World Championship Blacksmiths sponsor the show. Help support them by going to their website, www.worldchampionshipblacksmiths.com, and buy some merch to show your support, and use code BRAINS for 10% off your order. It's not including contest or membership fees. We look forward to seeing you down the road, and thanks for sponsoring the show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Forge and Brains Podcast. This is kind of our first one for the springtime. Hopefully everybody's busy and being able to handle their whole workload. You know what's going on. Today we got a cool guest. We got Tyson Clark with us today. And thank you for trying to take some time out of your busy schedule, Tyson. And
thanks for having us. Thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah, man.
Problem. So it's been kind of cool. You were like, when I first started competing, you were around all the time and everything. And it seems like everybody kind of took a break at the same time and went and did like their own thing. And right now you're kind of having a little bit of a comeback, huh?
Well, yeah, you know, the Corona happened, so we all kind of had to do our thing. But yeah, I bought a place, and my wife and I adopted a kid, so my priorities changed, and now I've gotten settled in enough that I can focus a little bit on practicing and getting together with some guys. So, yeah, I'm going back at it a little bit.
Adoption, that's not really something that we hear a whole lot amongst, like, horseshoers. Like, how is that? Like, how did you guys come across the option of adopting?
Well, it's my brother-in-law's son. So my wife's oldest brother's son, and he got in some trouble with the law, and Caleb's our son's name. He was kind of in and out of the foster system with his parents, and he was going to go back into the foster system, and they needed a place for him to stay. It was right before convention of 2020 that they called and asked if we'd take him, and we were like, yeah, why not? And one thing led to another. We adopted him in July of 21.
At least he still gets to be like with his family.
Oh yeah, no, and he still sees his dad on a weekly basis, pretty much too. Yeah, it's all good.
Oh wow,
pretty lucky. He's got lots of family. That little kid.
Yeah.
He's got
No.
like 4 sets of grandparents. He didn't have to go through a divorce.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Man, it's such a busy life. Like guarantee that was a lot of responsibility to take on at one time, man.
Oh yeah, it was a lot. Like I commend people that go through the foster system to adopt people, and I commend people that do the foster system without wanting to make the money, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot dealing with the bureaucratic shit, and it's a lot dealing with the parents who really don't care about doing any good. It's a lot of work. So you got to, anybody that does it because they want to do it, my hat's off to them, because it's going to be a long. I don't know if I'd ever do it again unless it was for another family member.
Yeah, I bet you do it again, man. It's just like you're not really a guy to shy away from some hard work. So it's like you're like, all right, I guess somebody's got to do it.
Yeah,
I'll take my turn.
Yeah.
How old is Caleb?
He's 7.
7?
Yeah, so he came to us right after he turned 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's got to be like a huge shock to the system. Like you say, Riley, like you guys had your baby and like you kind of grow him up. You're kind of brought into the transition of being parents, where Tyson, you adopt him at 3 and you're now just a full-blown parent.
Well,
fortunately, crazy.
Yeah, Laura and I both are, we all have multiple siblings. So we, I'm the oldest of 5. So I kind of helped raise my youngest siblings. And, but when you have to go, because Caleb came with a bunch of medical issues too. He's got a real rare anemia, and he had to get his splint taken out. There was at one point we were down at Banner every 3 weeks so he could get blood transfusions. So it was a big change for us, responsibility-wise, because we're both really dedicated to our professions as well. But fortunately, as you guys know, we can adjust. When you work for yourself, you can adjust. And so we just had to adjust and just put the priorities up a little bit different, and we have, and now it's smooth sailing. Now, I mean, nothing's changed with his health other than he's gotten better, but he still has to go to the doctors. He still has to do all that stuff, but Laura still goes to her horse shows. I'm still, I'm getting to go compete. We still can find ways to do the things we like to do. It's just
like
a matter
he's integrated in your system now.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and that is like that age is, man, just even that 3 to 7, like it's just been now, like ours turned 4, like that 3, like almost 4 is, you're like, oh, you're finally having fun with them.
Yeah.
Like they're finally like, they can kind of handle their own a little bit more. You can make them just like get through some stuff. Like it's kind of a little bit of funner age. So, but it is still like, they require a lot of work and attention, even just a healthy one. If you add on having some health issues on there, it's like, man, it's a schedule change.
Well, you either want to make them a good, decent member of society or you don't. And if you do, then it takes a lot of work to make them that way. But they are fun. Like when I was on I got kicked onto a team real quick for the last classic, and those guys came out to the house, and I got a couple foraging stations, and one of them, he kept telling those guys, this is mine. You can't have this one. This one's mine. You guys can go forge shoes over there, but this one's mine. And deep down, it made me a little warm. You know what I mean? Like, right on. It's yours then. You can have it.
That's good stuff. Man, so your dad was a horseshoer too, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. He still shoes horses every day.
Oh, no kidding. Is he around like where you live?
Yeah, he lives about 30 minutes from me, but the side of town I live on is where most of the horses are, so he's over here all the time. And, he still shoes every day. He doesn't do as many as he used to, but he does enough to pay the bills.
Was he ever into like the forging aspect, or?
No, not really. He did come around a little bit to a couple of the WCBs and did the novice, and he would go hang out and drink beer with some of the guys. He was into making money, still is. But I have 3 little brothers, and we would, my dad at the time when I was in high school, Arizona was known for the dude ranches. I mean, we still kind of are for the winter time. But back then, like every hotel had a dude string of horses, and they would just ride around in the desert. And my dad was the guy that did all those horses. So he'd take me and my younger brothers, and we'd do like 25 head of dude horses by lunchtime, and then just go to the next dude string. And then, so it was, we did a lot of horses when I was a kid. And then he also was the guy that did all the bad horses. Like he just did what he had to survive. He had 5 kids and just trying to shoot as many horses as he could.
So is that what kind of makes up a lot of your business, is dude horses? Or?
No. I do primarily like English sport horse type horses, jumpers and hunters and dressage horses.
So there must be a pretty good list of those kind of horses around that area if it keeps, everybody busy with the dude horses, and then you got, the English sport horses.
Yeah, there's a lot of horses here. A lot of horses. When we get people that travel here in the wintertime just to shoe horses. And and we got horses everywhere out here. And we got all the broad span, I don't know what it's like where you guys are at, but here I'm charging at the top end, and the bottom end is almost $150 to $200 less than me for a full set of horses, But that's the spectrum of the horses we have too. Mm-hmm. We got the high end jumpers and dressage horses, and then we just have some backyard horses where the people are having to pay in pennies. So,
I suppose that's true in every area, essentially.
Yeah, I'd say so. All the areas I've been to.
We're so wet here during the winter that it kind of shuts down a little bit. All the people that don't have indoor arenas, they're kind of slowing down. We're you guys stay pretty dry though, right?
Yeah, our wet season, when we think we have wet feet, I had Daniel Jones out here one year, and I thought the feet were wet. He still thought they were hard as hell. So it's it's definitely different, and we're just starting to get hard here to where you're dreading finishing that pull on the nippers because they're just going to crack. It's like that crack. I just trimmed a gypsy before I got on here, and it was like I thought I was going to spring the nippers. It's like summer's coming a little early.
Oh man!
It's kind of around here too. We've been in quite the winter drought up here. We didn't have quite the winter that we normally have either.
Yeah. Well, we've had a real wet winter. I think we got almost 20 inches of rain this winter, which is a lot for us. We go 14 inches for the year on water normally. So we had a real wet winter. We were getting these long winter rains that would last 24 hours, and that's real abnormal for us. So our feet did get pretty wet. There were horses getting abscesses in the backyards and stuff like that. And but then last summer, we didn't even get a full inch during the monsoons. So our feet stayed as hard as concrete all summer long. And normally the monsoons come and give us some relief to knock out the dry, because that sole just hold on to it and hold on, and you can't get it out. And then when you finally do get it out, they get sore because they're sitting on soft stuff.
Makes sense.
Man, those are always for I'm so used to wet feet that I can just pretty much take a nipper run to them with no knife in, everything's just so fallen out that when it does get super dry here and they're holding on, I'm I am out of my league right now. It's these feet are getting long, and I know there's a ton of sole in there, but I do not. What are you gonna do? Just go knifing it all out?
Well,
they're not gonna handle it.
And what I think is crazy about it is we get used to looking at the way a foot is supposed to look at in our climate. And I know I've gone to, places for practicing, real wet places, and the feet are just kind of almost bottomed out. We call them bottomed out here. And I just want to just gather them all up, just get that dome shape back, that strong dome shape. But I remember I was at a practice with Andrew Wells. He goes, I tried doing that, and it doesn't work out well out here. It just doesn't look right. It doesn't look right unless you do it, because it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, And out here, if you don't get foot off of horses, then they get long fast. They don't splay out; they get long, and and it's just a totally different beast.
grow like a tube.
Yeah, Coke can.
So do you got to use the like the propane torch trick a lot in the summer out there?
Well, yeah, you can. I don't use it a whole lot. Fortunately, doing the show horses, most of them are embedded shavings and stuff, so they won't get as hard. Just those dry lot trims I got that. And a lot of those, the sand will keep their sole exfoliated enough. You just have that hard ridge of hoof wall that just stakes around that you just got to lop off at a 45. You don't even want to touch the soles.
Yeah.
Man,
it's
sounds kind of nice though.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's hell sometimes.
The grass is always greener.
Exactly. Exactly.
Some wet feet sound kind of nice too. So
yeah, man,
so
I have hoof knives that are like 5-6 years old. Like they last so long.
Gosh dang, I couldn't imagine having that. I've got 2 coffee cans just full of hoof knives. That are smoked, We use them to cut hay bale strings.
Yeah. I'm bad about throwing them away too.
Yeah.
Like they just stack up.
Yeah, they just stack up.
What are you you feel kind of like bad about throwing
them
away. Yeah. They still got some type of use somewhere. Yeah. Like you're just hoping.
Yeah.
So did you hate going shoeing with your dad like a little bit just because like the feet were all hard and he probably was like doing decent numbers,
Well, I didn't know any different. I mean, I was around here. I was kind of just everybody's grunt. Like there were like me and my brothers really were there's a handful of shoers around here that would just grab us and go. And I mean, we could do the numbers and we knew how to keep our head down and our mouth shut. We just shot horses and we didn't really know any different. And like at the time when I was in high school, I didn't really want to be a horse shoer, but I made a lot of money shoeing horses. I had a lot of horses I would shoe after school. And then I would help guys travel all over the place to shoe horses. And my brother did the same. I mean, my dad and another farrier shared a little boarding barn here that had over 20 horses in it, and we would shoe them all in one day, and I was the only one that was pulling and finishing for them. And it's just how it's just how it went there. And so I didn't dread it. I didn't really know anything. I didn't dread it until I knew different, and now I don't. I mean, I probably have the same amount of horses on my books as my dad did in 2 weeks back then.
Yeah.
And it's just a different, but then, you're shooting doodle horses, you're not getting paid premium for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it would just fall into place too. Like I was thinking about that this morning, like how crazy, because I shoot for these crazy old dressage ladies that can, like the world falls apart if their horse, gets the wrong fly spray. And when I was a kid, my dad would take me and my brothers and we'd pile out of the truck and shoot, like a clown car. I mean, we'd pile out and we'd get 3 or 4 horses shod and they wouldn't even know what happened because we just would all fill in the spots. Wherever someone needed to be is where they were, and then we'd load everything up and go to the next ones. And, looking back, like some of the people I shoot for now, they would have had a heart attack, like a seizure right there on the ground watching that happen.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a different time, but it was good. I mean, taught a lot of work ethic. That's for sure.
So did you necessarily like have like a formal training for horseshoeing, or did you just learn from your dad?
No, I was fortunate with my dad, and then I got to apprentice around a lot of good horseshoers, and I in fact want to train horses. So I went and did that for a little while, and I ended up moving back to Arizona. And some of the older mentors I had around here, they kind of called me back here and said that, they needed a younger horseshoer around. And for some reason, when I showed up, my interest sparked, like to want to learn more, even than I knew. Like I was around some jumping horseshoers and some good horseshoers, but to actually learn and forge and learn about the anatomy and the biomechanics, get my journeyman, all that stuff, it like just...
Let's talk about the greatest Farrier supply house in the world, Well Shot. It's not every day you have a business that's invested in you and wants to do the best they can do for you. The whole crew over at Well Shot are some of the nicest folks you'll meet in this trade. The owner, John Harshbarger, does so much for us in this trade by supporting as much events as he possibly can. I see Wellshot is sponsoring so many events and can't help but think that somebody cares. Every year they host the largest free clinic in the world, put on by the World Championship Blacksmiths, by allowing us all to come and learn and try to become better. Wellshot has everything you could possibly need in your farrier practice. It'd probably take all day to list every product they provide, but whatever brand you use, they'll have it. Aside from products, they also carry all the top tools made by the best in our industry. So when you go to checkout at www.wellshot.com, use code BRAINS, and you'll receive a special gift in your order free of charge. Plus, that helps support us at Forging Brains. Can't say enough good things about the folks at Wellshot. It still blows my mind that they can get away with $10 shipping anywhere in the continental U.S. And don't forget, they have basically every anvil that you could possibly need or want to use in supply. So go over there and check them out and use code BRAINS at checkout to help show your support. Thanks, everyone. Did your dad kind of push you to jump into an apprenticeship, or just from being around those kind of people that they got you into being an apprentice?
Well, I was just kind of forced into being an apprentice. It's just what you did, I didn't have and I was just fortunate enough to apprentice for good guys, if you will. I was fortunate enough to be around good guys that taught me about good horseshoeing, guys that taught me about business. And I was around guys that were, all the journey, the contests and the journeyman, all that's horse shit. And then I was around other guys that encouraged it. You just take what you want from each one. But I helped guys and shod my own horses for, since I was like 15 years old, from 15 or probably even younger than that to, I probably didn't really fully go out on my own because there was a couple guys that I would help just on ethic, like a couple of guys I just couldn't stop helping shoe horses. They had a couple barns that I helped them with. And I think I finally stopped working for them when I was like 27. And,
wow.
But I was shoeing my own horses that whole time. I had trims when I was 14 and 15. I'd do on my own and shoe horses. But,
it's probably hard being in high school and the teachers are telling you to prep for college, and you're like, I'm already making more money than you are teaching.
And I was. I was. In fact, my senior English teacher and I had that conversation, and I thought my dad was going to beat my ass when he found out about it. But, we didn't get along too good, and I barely graduated high school because of that. Looking back, I wish I had someone yank a knot out of my ass, because I barely graduated high school because I could go shoe horses afterwards. And really the only reason I graduated high school is because my mom asked me to. She was just get your degree, because I only took 4 classes my senior year, and I would shoe horses, or I would be riding a couple colts or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I wasn't even living at home and just bringing in more money than all my buddies were.
Yeah.
And, so that's it.
It is hard too, because I was thinking of this the other day of I wish during high school, because I was doing the same thing as you. My senior year of high school, I got out at 11 and I got to work the rest of the day. And school was just and I was just wanting to graduate because my mom really wanted me to have a high school diploma. But I think back now of man, if someone would have talked me into it, that it was from a business side, those are free classes.
Yeah.
If I would have just went to more of the free classes and paid attention to some of the math classes and business classes and stuff like that, it'd be it'd pay off now. Now if I want that knowledge, I have to go pay for it.
Well, the thing is I had another horseshoer call me recently about my apprentice, and he's like, we need to talk him out of going to college, because he's going to college right now. He works for me 3 days a week, and he goes to college the other days. And I told him I wouldn't let him. I said, I'm not talking him out of college. I said, because I didn't even know till I was 27, 28 years old that I wanted to do this for a living full time.
Yep.
So why am I going to assume a 19-year-old kid wants to, sure, he gets to make a crap load of money right now, and he's loving it, and he brags to his friends all about it, but by the time he's 26 or 27, he might be like, you know what, I want to be a firefighter. So why am I going to stop him from going to school? So at least he'll have the degree if he decides he wants to do something else.
That's a good point.
I think that's man, I have three nephews that are all like 20 to 17 age. And so college is like a big thing on them. And it's like I tell them, go to college just to learn how to network and meet people.
Yeah.
Like if nothing else, even if you don't get a degree, there's so many business people I've met that are in high up big businesses that they're like, oh, well, I met this guy while I was at college and we were friends then. So now here we are working together later in life. It's like, just go and learn how to meet people and be on your own for a little bit. It's probably going to speed up of you knowing what you want to do for a living.
Well, and having to live on minimalistic standards too. Like you can actually just enjoy your life for 4 years.
Yeah.
Not having to worry about paying for a bunch of shit because you're working for a bunch of crazy old ladies shoeing horses.
Yeah.
You know?
Were you quickly all of a sudden have a bunch of, like, you start taking horseshoeing way seriously. Like, you're like, you're going to have some more bills. And now you have some more bills. Like, you have to go work. You have to keep working and pay these bills off. Like, this is how it goes.
Well, and I think everything is a process for everybody because I've been around horseshoeing since I was a kid. I was not fully I didn't compete my first competition until 2011. So that would have put me at 30 years old. Yeah, 30 years old. And I just did one.
So you were shoeing for 15 years.
Yeah, and then I went to one in 2013, and then in 2015 I made the Category 2 team. So I really didn't get into competing full time until I was 33, 34. But I've been around horseshoeing almost 20 years at that point. Now I can think back and be like, man, what if someone would have got me into forging and competing when I was 19? Maybe I could have been like Bodie. Maybe I could have been like Dylan. But that's just not how it worked, and it wasn't supposed to work like that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it wasn't supposed to work like that because the process was supposed to happen how it happened. Because I didn't deny it, it wasn't presented, and that's okay. It's not like I had someone saying, "Hey, you need to go to competitions," and I was like, "Hey, piss off." But maybe if I did, and I'm still here, then that's okay because that was just the process that needed to happen. I don't like I'll be 43 this year, and I've got no qualms against competing against anybody that's 20 years old. I know they've got a bit more stamina because they're 20 years old, but I do other things to create stamina.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exactly it, man. I tell people all the time is like, they'll ask like, how did this work out? Like, I don't know how any of this worked out. I'm like, things just present themselves. Like waves come in, you're either going to ride it or let it wash you down a little bit and then wait for the next one. It's like, you can't get mad though that everybody, like somebody else had a different, thing happen. They're like, oh, okay. Like, well, Troy is doing so good. Well, if he would have went to college, he wouldn't be smashing it like he is right now. It's like, no, but like, Troy might decide in 2 years he wants to go to college all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like, you got to just take your own route.
Everybody's got their own wave to ride in life, and you just have to ride that wave. And you just, evaluate the opportunities as they come and take them or leave them.
Because I bet by the time you started competing, trimming and fitting feet and stuff was probably pretty easy for you.
Oh, no, absolutely not. It never is.
Never mind.
Think about, I had to relearn everything because I grew up in the land of St. Croix lights and Eventers, right?
Yeah.
Or
so you were doing everything cold, essentially.
California style jumping horseshoe and shoe them in that big old rectangles, And I did a lot of rainers, and we did a lot of heinous shit to rainers. I had to relearn what I was doing. I literally got into it because I was like, this is not working as a horseshoer, and
this isn't going good.
What do you think made you realize this isn't working as a horseshoer? Because there's so many people that will go through their whole career being like that, but you obviously just something happened where you just started to realize this isn't working and I need to get better.
Well, I think it was having the forethought to realize that I never had any healthy feet I was working on.
Oh, okay.
Right? None of my feet were healthy. I mean, some of them were fine, but, it was hard to keep them healthy. And I was like, okay, I'm doing something heinous. I was doing the same thing that everybody else was around me was doing, But I was like, I can be doing better. These horses shouldn't have to tolerate this all the time. So then, like anything else, you start digging deep and start trying to figure and asking around. And that's when I started going to clinics and stuff. And then I was like, all right, I'm starting to see that things can be better. Things can be better. I mean, just today I was at a little, like it's a little show barn in town, and I ran into another horseshoer, and his apprentice is my age. He's just a lifelong apprentice. He's a good guy. He just never had the desire to have his own business. And he's
Some people are like that.
Yeah, he said, are you still going to those clinics? And I was like, anyone I can get to. And he's like, some of us don't need to learn anything. And I said, yeah, and it shows, you know? Like, and he's like, you just think too much about horseshoeing. It's like, yeah, well, have a good day, bud. You know, like, some of us don't have to think, you know? You're one of them. And it's not, I mean, that's his path. If that's what he wants in his path, then that's fine, you know?
It really is. I think some people too, they just like, a little bit ignorance is bliss, and they're just like, I just don't even see it. This is good enough. Like there was a point where like you obviously were like, okay, I'm starting to see this now. Well, like, these things were looking okay, and now they look not as good as I was thinking.
Well, and then you start learning it's work to be better. It's work to be better at anything. You have to work. And so how much work do you want to do? And then we shoe horses. So if you're shoeing horses all day, it's hard to want to do any extra work after all the work, right? Yeah. Even just doing mental, like reading the Gregory book or something like that's still work. And so you either want to put in the extra work or you don't. And that's what I think it comes down to.
It's about being pretty damn honest to yourself that when you sit down, you know, my favorite thing is people are like, where do you find the time? Or, I don't got time for that. I don't got time for this. It's like, okay, I guarantee you scrolled today. I guarantee you sat down and watched TV today. Or you sit down and read. It's like, when you sit down, okay, don't go and read this trash that isn't going to make you better in life. Read something that's going to like progress yourself, you know, even if it is just watching a forging video, like putting on one of Craig's videos or something. And all right, I'm going to figure this out a little bit. But it's like, man, you have to be pretty self-honest to get better at things.
Well, you have
like to own your time.
Yeah, you have to be accountable for what you want from yourself. You know, you have to be able to look in the mirror and have those mirror talks. You know, like, what do I truly want from myself, and how am I going to prioritize it? You know, like, I don't necessarily get in the shop every day. And the days I don't get in the shop, I work out a little harder that day. Right? Yep. And, you know, I got other goals that aren't just horseshoeing goals. I like to hunt. So I want to make sure I'm fit enough I can hunt. Where I live, the country we hunt in is rough country. So you have to be able to throw 50 pounds on your back and hike. So I want to make sure I'm fit to do that, because there's nothing worse than not being able to hike to the top of the hill that that big buck you've been watching all summer sitting up there and you can't get to him.
Oh, it is something where like you kind of like, if it comes down to what you're okay with being with yourself. Like, okay, can you look at something on top of the hill and be like, well, I just can't get there. Like, well, if you're okay with saying that, that's good for you. Yeah. But it's the same thing of like looking at a foot. You see a really sweet shoe job get done at a contest, and you either look at that and say like, oh, I can never do that. Or you look at it and say, I don't care what I need to do in the next few months.
I'm going to do that.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to be able to do that. You know, it's like, I'm with you. Like, I like to hunt a bunch. So it's like, you see things far away and you're like, I'm going to go there because I busted my ass for these last couple of months to make this possible. Yeah. There's a lot of guys, though, I don't think are willing to do it. They just are okay not doing it.
Well, I think it's easy to not do it because it's like Madison's this weekend, and like every contest you go to, there'll be guys that don't do good, and they'll just say, well, I just didn't have the time to practice. You know, maybe they didn't have the time to practice, but instead of saying, well, I just didn't have the time to practice, you'd be better off saying, well, I'm there because I wasn't able to create the time I needed to practice. Right? Like, and I'd rather be 50th knowing I practiced as much as I could, because then it's easier to evaluate what I need to do to move forward instead of going, well, maybe I should have built a few more of those shoes. I want to go knowing I took all the time I could to try to prepare. And it's that, and that's how I am with the hunting too, or with my family, anything, it's like, you want to make sure you put that time in to prepare, and you have to be able to sit down and evaluate how much time you're willing to put in for each thing you want to do. And
and
if you try to over and prepare, it's almost worse for you than under preparing, because then you create bad habits, you start cutting corners, but then you say, "Oh, I practiced every day." Well, what kind of practice did you do every day?
Yeah,
So,
I've been there where I've like, well, I just made a bunch of shoes, and it's like, well, I never really fixed that quarter, or I never really fixed like this appliance. I just like kept making the same shitty ass appliance I was making at the beginning of the practices.
Yeah.
So it is. So all right. So you're going to Madison coming up, right?
Yeah.
Then when the Madison list came out, when you first started practicing the shoes, what was running through your mind of like how you were going to lay out your week? Of like how you were going to get your work done, get family time in, and how you're going to start attacking these shoes.
Well,
and going forward from there, how you readjusted your practice time once you knew where you were at on them.
Well, the Madison list was a pretty unique list, because the Madison list is the first one where you have 2-man all 3 days, right?
Yep.
And not only are they 2-man, they're 2-man shoes that are hard to practice on your own. Building that big bar shoe on your own. I've built plenty of them, and it's not something I'm going to do when I get home from Madison.
And be happy it's over.
And like the toe bars were, I was lucky enough to be on a classic team, so I would practice toe bars like crazy, because I had a pile of hind draft shoes, and I'm a hind guy, so I had a pile of hind draft shoes laying on the shop floor. I just put toe bars on, And but back to your question, so like my business always comes first, and the reason it comes first is because my family's first. I want to be able to pay my bills, make sure my family's taken care of, right? So a big thing for me is and I talked to the guys on my team about this year too, is making sure everything at home. You want me to wait a second? Oh, there you
are.
Everything at home. You need everything at home okay. It doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be awesome. But if your stuff is not lined up at home, you're not going to be able to focus on anything else. Like if you and your wife are battling, if you're behind on your mortgage, if you've got 2 weeks back on your shoeing list, like all these things like this, and you're trying to go practice for 6 hours after work, that's what at least for me, that's what I'm going to be thinking about. I'm not going to be able to focus on my practices. So I think the primary thing is to set up that you can be clear enough whatever that clarity is in order to have good practice. So like for me, I set up my books, and I'm like, I can get in the shop every day if I want, but I like taking my kid to jiu-jitsu. And, so the days I take him to jiu-jitsu, I'll just build shoes for the truck those days, because I may not have the time after work to like really get into practice and then I like taking care of my place, so I make sure I have a lot of time to take care of my place. And when you actually take care of the things around you, then everybody else around you wants to help you take care of your things too. And so like, my wife and I were pretty fortunate because we got each other's backs that way. Like she'll literally be like, "Are you sure you're getting in the shop enough this week?" And it's not because she's trying to be like an awesome wife. I mean, she's great, but it's because she does her thing. She wants to make sure I get to do my thing. And so I guess I really don't have to like set out like, okay, this is the times I'm going to do. All I would say is make sure everything's done so that way you can do things. Yeah. Because if you have hang-ups somewhere and in your head they're a bigger priority than building shoes for a contest, you're going to save yourself some time just taking that evening and taking care of those, then getting in the shop the next night, than you are going to be trying to just gather the strings up and hope they attach themselves.
Yeah, and essentially have a half-assed practice.
Yes. Yep. So, and I mean, fortunately, I can get in the shop all the time, and like this practice was unique because like it was just hard to practice the actual shoot, the whole process, like have a go unless you had a striker. And even trying to have a go without the right striker was tough, right? And so this was a unique one to practice for. I mean, Logan Salcedo came down to the house quite a few times, and we were able to practice quite a bit. And it's going to be an interesting one. I'm looking forward to see how it goes. It's going to be a slugfest. So.
Oh man, some of those shoes are pretty intricate, and they are, like you were saying, they're very striker dependent.
Our great friends over at Farrier have been supporting us on Forging Brains for a while now. Since the time that they have sponsored the show, we have received many great products that I wouldn't have thought about buying, or because I was being a tight ass. But they were sent to me in their subscription box, and now I use those products in my day-to-day practice. Each box is sent bi-monthly, and in those boxes is an array of the top tools and products that have been tested by the greats in our industry. So go to www.farrierbox.com and use code BRAINS for 25% off your first month's order. You won't be disappointed, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Like it is one of those.
It's a hard thing to practice the shoes beforehand with somebody that you're probably not going to run the go with in the time when it comes down to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have one of the guys from my classic team striking for me. So we've worked together but yeah, if you haven't been practicing these shoes with a striker, that's another thing. Like you can, like building them on my own is completely different than building them with a striker. So I like to, when I'm practicing, I like to write down everything. Okay, so heat 1 was this for this shoe. And then once I get all my heats done, like what I'll do for the New Mexico shoes, for instance, when I get home, and I may even do it Monday or Tuesday, like the individual shoes, I have a go. I mean, I just have a go when I see where I'm at, right? Then after I'm done with that, I go back to if you can't make them good slow, you're not going to be able to make them good fast. So I'll go and take my time, and I figure out everything I need to do. And then and I started adapting this actually during COVID, after I was on the American Farriers team, when I should have been adapting this before. But I just reflected back on all those experiences, because I would build the contest shoes that would come out, even though I wasn't going to the contest. I'd build them still, and I'd write down how this heat was going to go and how that heat was going to go, and then I started adapting them into the goes. And this contest, I wasn't really able to do that just because it was real tough to have any goes. So I've had to have a lot of mental talks, like, okay, like I've just been driving around visualizing how these goes are going to go. And
just
because I can't really write the steps down on my little whiteboard in the shop.
Yeah. No, it is always one of those, like, especially those heavy shoes where you're like, individually, you're going to have to take the 2 heats to get it kind of done, where it's like, oh, well, I know on the day with my striker and with the real hot shoe, like it's going to get down in 1 heat, but it's like that does affect your operation.
Yeah. It affects how you prepare. That's for sure.
Yeah. But I did like what you say, that you're like, when you're driving around and stuff, you're making shoes. I don't think a lot of people make use of that time. Like you saying, you're going to jiu-jitsu practice and you like mowing your yard and stuff like that. Man, that's a great time to be running the shoes through your head.
That's exactly right. And it's a lot easier on your body. But you have to take, I mean, it's literally like, I'll try to think about it like the whole 2 minute of the heat, like anticipating the 2 minutes of that heat. I try to think about it. And it's like I said, it's just something I've adapted recently. And I wish I would have adapted it before, but I didn't. And, but it's, something I would encourage a lot of people to do, is just to take the time to prepare in other ways than just making shoe after shoe after shoe after shoe.
It's something like you came up with it though, just because of your life experiences. Like you couldn't have came up with it beforehand. You had to go through those things to come up with it. But I do think that's a really smart strategy that you don't hear a lot of people doing it, that you just run the class like you would, and then start making them slow. Because once you ran that class fast, you have like, all right, these were the traffic jams. these points I was kind of confused. Like,
well, and I'm at a point in shoemaking where I might, it's probably easier for me to do that than say a Cat 1 guy or a Cat 2 guy. It might be a little more difficult for them just to run the class on some shoes that they've never even tried to make. And
it's true.
But that's just the process. I don't know if I'd necessarily encourage it. If you don't know how to make the shoes, I probably wouldn't encourage that, because then you're just going to create a bunch of bad habits.
2 piles of turd.
Yeah. And like I said, I just do it to see where I stand. And all right, this, like the medial sides on these shoes are my weak point. So I'm going to have to try to focus on that and make it my strong point or whatever.
So you've wrote all these steps down on a whiteboard and erased them.
Yeah.
So you don't keep like a little booklet. Like I know Ben Yeager has like a little book.
I guess the technology we have, I should be taking pictures. But like I said, the first time I adapted it for a contest is I went to that one in Edgewood that you did real good at, Gavin, that last year. And because I hadn't competed since convention at 2020, and that whole winter was real fast for me. Like there was a lot of stuff going on competition wise for me, and I almost lost myself in how to prepare for a contest because there was a lot of stuff going on. And so like after we bought this house, I've got a proper shop now, and I was able to like just kind of figure out how, because at that point I didn't even know if I was going to get back into competing. I know I love making shoes. And like I would just see a random, I don't have Facebook or Instagram or anything, but someone come to the shop and they'd show me a shoe list, or I get the WC list in the mail, and I just make the shoes. And then I'd start be like, all right, well now heat 4, this is where I want to be. Heat, so then for the individual class in Edgewood last year, I really like stuck to that because I didn't have a striker. I had a kid coming over that's become a pretty good striker, but we couldn't really run the 2-man go enough for me to feel confident running it like that, and but I did it for the individual go, and shoot, I had a great individual day, just like I think you did too, Gavin. And I was like, all right, there's something to that, because I never felt more prepared for a class than that class. And so now that's how I've done everything since, and I haven't gone to an individual contest since Edgewood, but I practiced for all the other ones short of Fort Worth. I didn't really practice for Fort Worth because of hunting, but all the other contests I'd see, the locals or whatever, I'd pick a class and I'd practice for like that. And I'd encourage anybody, at least it worked for me, because I just felt prepared, just taking the time to write it down.
You made it on the American Farriers team in 2020?
No, I was on in 2019. I was the alternate in 2019, and I got to step up because one of the team members wasn't able to go to England.
Oh, okay. That's right. So how was that experience being like the alternate on the team versus like, because don't they have you guys making all the shoes like in preparation for the like Stoneleigh and everything just in case?
Well, and that was kind of a cool year because there was, like the 4 guys on the team were handy as hell. Like I didn't think there was a snowball's chance in hell I was going to be doing anything but the alternate work. And
who were your teammates that year?
Patrick Dutton, Bodie, Daniel Jones, and Travis Smith. And
it's pretty.
And it was a fun team to be on. It was a real fun team to be on. And they, but yeah, one of the guys couldn't get over there, and I'd made the shoes a handful of times, like all of them. But then when it came, like it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I think maybe 4 weeks before, and that put me. I practiced my ass off, and like I said, I think looking back, I was practicing badly because I was so flustered on making sure I made as many shoes as I could to be as prepared as I could. I kind of lost track of the big picture, but at the same time, I can't falter myself because I did. I stuck my chin down and went for it. And I can't say I did the team any favors, but I was there. So
it was and you were just doing what you knew to do.
Yeah. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Do you think it was helpful that you knew like everybody pretty Because you competed with everybody, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I know all those guys real well. So that was very helpful, and none of us, no one hated each other on that team, thankfully.
Yeah.
Which happens, we all got along well. So that helped a lot. And yeah, I mean, me and Patrick were on the same side of the horse, and we worked well together. We worked really well together. I mean, it was a fun year. It was a real fun year. It just, cool. And I was fortunate enough that year, and I think they're doing it again now too, where they let me go to all the practices. They had me go to all the practices and be a part of the practices. I really would, I just kind of make shoes off the side and watch them shoe, and yeah, it was good. It was a lot of fun. And I've been fortunate enough to be on some pretty cool teams, some cool classic teams, and real fortunate.
Were you on the huge ass team?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I love that name.
That was me and Mike Stone and Bodie and Andrew Wells. And that was a fun team. And I mean, Mike Stone was the chief of that team. He was our steward. He was the one leading the way.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at what he's like. In fact, at the Classic this year, he was like, "Yeah, I did pretty good. Look at the three of you guys." Like, I was like, "You should start a horseshoeing school, Mike." He's like, "I don't think."
Mike's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
But I got to be on a team with Travis Coons, with Daniel Jones and Victor Frisco, and with Robert Dukes and Mike and Scott Inman. That was a good team. And I've been on a few teams with, like with Bodie and Craig and Chris Madrid. And I mean, I've been real fortunate to be around some of the people I've got to be around. So, yeah, I was pretty fortunate to be around all those guys.
So how different is it this year? It was kind of interesting. Like, you just all of a sudden came back at the Winter Clinic.
Yeah.
Didn't even know you were coming, and you're back, and you're on a Classic team.
Yeah, I think
you're on a Classic team right now with some like newer guys.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they called me like three weeks before the Winter Clinic, or 2 weeks or something, and we got to practice in the weekend before the Winter Clinic, and I didn't know any of those guys, and they're great guys. I mean, they're all pretty good guys.
Yeah.
And like me and Marcus got along great on the Hines, and he was the one that called me. And it was fun, but it definitely was. It opened my eyes to a whole other perspective of competing that I've never had to experience, because I've always been the guy. If I wasn't the guy they were having to bring up, I was the guy next to that guy, right? Because I was always on a team where I was on a team with like Travis and Bodie, for instance, or a team with Travis Coons and Daniel Jones. Like I was never the top guy on the team. And so that was a completely different perspective to be the guy that they were looking at. Like, okay, what do we do next?
That would be a hard mind shift.
And it was fun. Like, I enjoyed it. And, they tried and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was the anchor. I didn't get a whole lot of time to do much, and that's what I expected. And I had a blast. I would have done it again. So
you still had fun.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you learned during practice of maybe how to practice with those guys, or and some advice you'd give to more other new teams and stuff, or guys that are wanting to maybe put a team together?
Well, I think the one thing I saw is how valuable experience is to the inexperienced. Because like Jake Inges, who's on the team, he's in Robert Jukes' shop, and you could see how quickly his shoes were progressing as soon as I got on the team, because Jukes and I are buddies, and it almost seemed like Jukes felt like he was going to help him just to help me, And then Marcus and Josh both, they just propelled themselves. So what I think it is it's a testament to what Craig always says, the destination's excellence. But when you set the standard at a certain point, it's just going to rise. They're going to come to the standard, and they all did. And And I don't, can I say they practiced the hardest out of every team I've been on? No, but they practiced a lot, and you could see it was having. So if you're a new team and you really don't have a shepherd, like a good shepherd, like someone with a lot of experience, you need to find someone that maybe can't be on the team but can show you, invest a little bit. And I think it helped. The thing that helped them is once I decided to be on the team, I just went straight into the shop. I was like, well, I told them I'm going to do it. So, because I haven't had to fit a roadster or hind cock and wedge or a draft shoe in a long time.
Quite a few years.
Long time. And, so I wanted to make sure I was prepared, and it almost seemed like, that stuff is contagious. They just kind of caught on to it too. And, you need to get around people that have been there.
It is, because it's funny that, like, even with all the technology we have and videos and everything like that, nothing is like, all that is shit compared to having it in your hands and seeing it in person.
Yeah, you can't replace it.
You can see a specimen picture, of like a perfectly shod tool and forward foot, like a caulk and wedge. You're like, okay, even though you're like acknowledging that's the standard on the wall, it's invaluable compared to like having a guy like you be in their shop and like show them all the way from beginning to end, and they get to hold it in their hands and like, oh, okay, that's what we're aiming for here.
Well,
all of a sudden they start doing it. You know, it's.
Well, and for me, it really wasn't like I was a bit out of touch with what the standard is because it's been so long since I've competed, right? So they were relying on me just on my team experience, okay, how do we work as a team here? And so that's where I kind of had to step in, and then I just practiced enough to where I could keep the shoe standard at a certain level, and just worked out. But
it's an interesting thing that happens, like when you kind of step away. Like when I came back to do the classic with you guys, Riley, like the standard almost does like raise up like a little bit higher, and it almost kind of changes just ever so slightly where you feel like you're out of tune and out of touch, and like you have to get brought back up into it.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing how that happens, and not much changes, but it's just like a tiny little bit that makes you feel like it's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. Like, I just think about the shoes I was making at the Winter Clinic, and I think about the ones I was making before. I was like, gosh, dang, Jim, clear back into 2016.
Yeah, so, it's a weird process.
Yeah, it's a process.
Well, it's like it'll be little things too. Or like, oh yeah, we're not making wedges like that anymore.
Yeah.
Now we're rounding them this way because they are safer and a little bit better, and they go on to feet like. It is like just random little things of like, oh, through science now we've all caught on. They're like, this is an ideal caulking shape to go on to this shaped foot.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one thing that helped me this year too is I really like all the years before I was trying to prove myself. Trying to see where I could, I wanted to make this team or do this or show this person I could be this good. And this year I'm just like, I'm just going. You guys are getting to see my work, and you're going to like it or you're not, and I'm just going to keep going and keep doing my work, and I'm just going to adjust because one thing I've learned is we can't, and because I got real wrapped up in it, and I saw it with these guys too on my team, and it made me reflect a lot about it is you almost forget who you are because you're trying to catch up to somebody else. If you will. Like, there's probably an axe maker that's trying to make axes like Riley Kirkpatrick right now, and instead of just making him how he's going to make axes. And so I spent a lot of time trying to catch up to somebody instead of just trying to be who I needed to be. And in fact, at one point during one of the practices, one of the team members was like, man, it's cool. Like your shoes are cool, man. I was like, well, thanks, dude. Like, what? And he's like, well, they're just your shoes. They're your shoes. Like, I was like, well, whose shoes are they supposed to be, man? Like, no one else is here making it for me. No, I'm just saying. It's like when you look at it, it looks like Tyson made that shoe. And I said, well, cool. Does it look like shit? And he's like, no, it's badass, man. I was like, well, I'm not gonna make it like I'm not gonna make a left hind like Chris Madrid or left hind like Bodie would or whatever, because I'm Tyson. I'm not them. I'm not gonna try, because what I figured out is, and I see it in a lot of the younger or newer competitors, is they spend more time trying to catch up to be someone else instead of just being themselves. You'll never ever catch that other person. Never ever.
No, I think that's such a, man, if someone was going to grab a good little tidbit out of this podcast, I would think it would be that part, because you do see people so confused. They're like, well, I want to swing like Troy.
Yeah.
And I want to make Calkins like Bodie, and I want to have toes like this guy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, when you put all this all together, it looks confused as fuck.
Yes.
Like it looks like all those things like forced on there, where it's like, if you just make something appealing to your eye, it's probably gonna be better.
Well,
and if you just focus on your own journey and being okay where you're at in it, and like, it's okay being a little behind or being in a different path, just keep working. Like, don't be so caught up on them. It's just going to slow you down.
Well, to me, it's not even really all that as much as it is like, you're not Bodie. I'm not Riley.
No.
Not Gavin. I'm me. So my process is going to be different. I'm not Chris Madrid. And I will say, I spent years trying to be Chris Madrid, trying to be Bodie or Travis Coons, because that's who I was around. And that's who I thought I had to be in order to be successful. And when I look back, looking back, I'm like, well, they weren't trying to be. Chris Madrid was not trying to be Bodie. Bodie wasn't even trying to be Craig. And you look back, you're like, no, you just got to be who you are. Either you got it or you don't. But you're still gonna and that's like Gavin in Edgewood. Like, Gavin just showed up and was Gavin. And shit, what'd you get, like 6th or 5th or 4th? You freaking kicked some ass, And it's like watching Gavin make shoes that weekend. He was just making horseshoes. That's he was just doing his thing, having some fun. And I think that kind of hit me at that point too. I was like, see, that's it's like we get wrapped up in trying to be something or someone we're not, instead of just focusing on ourselves.
Yeah, try to trust your own process, not necessarily aspire to be somebody, but aspire to get somewhere that you want to be.
Or just trying to be better than who you are. It's like we can always try to be better than who we are. And being humble enough to take guidance from those people too. That's where a lot of people fall short too, is they'll kind of miss the guidance that's in front of them. Because
sponsor of Forge and Brains podcast, Yukon Forge. If you're a fan of the show, then you probably already heard the interview we did with John McNerney and all the badass things he's accomplished in his career, as well as the type of character this man has. John's graciously offering you guys 10% off on anything you order when you go to www.yukonforge.com and use code BRAINS at checkout. On his website, you'll find he has a variety of high-quality, hand-built tools made by him personally. His hoof knives are some of the best on the market. All his tongs are forged from 4140 steel to hold up to whatever you're grabbing and holding. John's been developing a new hammer out of 4140 steel that looks pretty dang sick, and I can't wait to try one. His fullers are handmade from S7, and I personally know of some that have withstood the years of hammer blows. Also, a new and unique tool John has developed is the propane nut. There's nothing worse than stripping out your propane regulator from not having the right tool. The Yukon Forge propane nut replaces whatever you had been using for a simple tool that you can tighten and loosen with your fingertips with ease. So go to www.yukonforge.com and use code BRAINS for 10% off your order. That's a hell of a deal, my friends.
They're too worried about being unsuccessful, like failing at something or whatever it may be.
Or showing that person that they maybe look up to, they don't want to show them that they don't know.
Yeah.
So they don't ask for the guidance. And it's like, just be okay not knowing and asking for some help. No one knew it at one time. And if you're looking at the biggest picture of trying to be like somebody else, you're just going to slow you down. Just focus in and focus on something small that you're screwing up on. Fix that little skill set, It's going to start rolling a little bit better. Like, you do see it a lot of people. They just are jealous of somebody else. They're not even jealous. They just want that success too. And they have a very confused way of how to get there, I think.
Well, I just don't. I mean, for one thing, I don't know how many people that were around in the competition world have actually competed at anything, because a lot of guys you get around, you can tell they really haven't been on a team of any sort, even a soccer team,
Yeah.
So the whole being competitive thing kind of, you can see it's a new process for them. And then, since they've never competed at anything, they've never been told they suck. And when they, especially now it's bad to tell kids they suck. That's why we got our kid in jiu-jitsu, because he's physically getting told he sucks. Right? Yeah. He's not, verbally being told he sucks. He is physically getting his arm ripped off his body. So he's
learning.
I got to get better at this if I'm going to be good at this.
Yeah, I don't want to get my ass beat anymore.
Yep. And
that's essentially it.
Yep. And so I think that's what it comes down to. And me and a couple of the other guys, we've talked about this a lot. It's like you have to be honest with yourself. And honesty is a huge thing that I think is, and I say this because I was that guy too, where I wasn't honest with myself. And you have to be honest with yourself enough to know where you stand and where you got to improve, and that it's okay. It's okay. Like if you can't make a roadster worth of shit, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're not going to be able to. Like everybody at one point. Like Travis Coons wasn't always Travis Coons. Riley wasn't always Riley. Gavin wasn't always Gavin. It's a process, and you either continue the process or you don't. And like for me, when I was after COVID, I had a bit of, after that winter, I had a bit of sour taste in my mouth from competing, and it had nothing to do with anybody around me. It was all me. But I love making horseshoes, and so I didn't want to stop making horseshoes. And one of the things, the reason I did is because my ego stepped in, and I didn't want to be, as we've seen so many before us, get to a certain point and they just plateau, right? Like some of the top competitors in our country just plateau, and then they'll go to a contest and they're like at the bottom. And to me, that's a disgrace to our trade. Like to the people that, if anything, that's I've got out of this, instead of trying to be like Craig or be like Chris Madrid or Travis Coons or Bodie, those four names, or Daniel Jones, like those five guys are real influential to me when I started competing. And instead of trying to be like them, I think it's better for me to try to continue to improve myself, to show them I respect what they did, instead of just being one of those guys that shows up and then gets, second to last place, even though at one time I was a top competitor, and it's like, that's okay, but we're drinking Coors together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at it. It's like you're gonna improve, so that way you do yourself, you respect yourself and the people that brought you up.
So what do you think of like an easy way? So say you go to a contest, then you say you do end up placed second to last. Like, what is a way to pick yourself up and be like, all right, I got to get over this hump. I got to go find somebody to help me, essentially, right?
Well, I don't think like if it's terrible doing terrible. I mean, and we've all done terrible, and there's nothing worse than doing terrible. But I think like from, looking back at the contests I've done terrible at, where I thought I should have done better at, like convention of 2020, for instance, I threw the convention shoes aside because I was practicing for another contest. I ended up not even going to that contest. So, but I was already entered for convention, and I did horse shit. I mean, like embarrassingly bad for someone that was on the AFT, right?
Yeah.
And at first I was like, well, I never practiced. So, but now, I didn't practice. So of course I'm going to do bad. I didn't practice those shoes. They were just horseshoes. I should have been able to still just make horseshoes. But I was so wrapped up in my head about trying to prove something that I lost focus on the fundamentals and the basics of just making horseshoes, And so Oh, I think the biggest thing to do is just to reflect on why you ended up in second to last. Is it because this is your first contest and you've literally only been holding tongs for 2 months? Or is it because you thought you're the greatest thing ever and everybody on Facebook's telling you you're awesome, but then when you finally got face to face with everybody, you got second to last? So you have to just be honest with yourself. You know, like when I went to Edgewood, I think I ended up like 11th or 12th or something. And I would have rather been in the top 10, right?
Yeah.
And I was a little poopy pants. I was at 12, but I had to reflect back. I just reflected, okay, well, I could have done this better, and I could have done this better. When I shod the foot, I know I could have done this, and that would put me over that hump, right? You have to be able to reflect and be honest with yourself. Not, well, Andrew should have given me those points because it was there. Well, if it was there, he'd have given you the points.
Yep.
That's right.
You know, so I think the biggest thing to the answer to your question for me is just having honest reflection and what you need to do moving forward, and having people you can call and communicate with to move forward. You know, and I'm fortunate to have some people. I mean, we're all a pretty big network, and you know, to be able to be like, okay, well, I'm looking at the mirror, but I'm not seeing what I need to do. What do I need to do? And then if you're honest with yourself, they're going to be honest with you. So many times we can't be honest with each other because the person on the other side of the line doesn't want to be honest with themselves. So if you're trying
and you know it.
Yeah, and you know it. You do. You know it. So no matter what you say, they're just going to, it's horse shit to them because they don't want to hear what they're telling themselves because they know what they need to adjust. But if they're not adjusting it themselves, they're not going to adjust it if you would even help them. So it's like, why even help? And like I said, I say this because I've been that guy on the other line where I thought, well, this is what I need to do. And the person on the other line was like, no. And I'm like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And then lo and behold, they were right. You know?
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be honest with myself. So.
No, I think it's hard though to be around people that don't want to be honest with themselves once you've surrounded yourself with a bunch of people that are all real raw with each other. You know what I mean? And really trying to build each other up. Then you go to like normal people and they kind of see you as an asshole. You're like, oh no, I thought we were all just trying to.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you ran into it with hunting, especially. Like I can only hunt with so many people because we'll do something and I'm critiquing the crap out of it the whole entire time of how we could have done better, even if it went great.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we could have maybe done a little bit better, but it's not everybody's like that. So how, for even just you personally, how do you, are you just not always like in a depressed mood? You know what I mean? Hating yourself. How do you still keep some positivity in there while still being very self-honest?
That's great because there was a long time where I was depressed. If I wasn't successful, the first thing that would happen was depression because I felt like I was letting myself down. I was letting the people that, like, first and foremost, the people that were giving their shop time to me down. I was letting them down. I was letting down people that, you know, my family, taking time away from my family. I would be ultra depressed. And that not just with everything I took, you know, because to me, my family is my top priority. So when I'm away from my family, those are the first people I let down because I wasn't successful when I took that time away from them. And a lot of the guys that I competed with, I considered family. So it was the same situation. And so I was really, I would get depressed and I would be hard on myself. So I think that what I came to terms with for myself is, like, for instance, when I go hunting and I don't come home with that big buck. Well, my family would rather me be gone to be able to come back and be me. Sorry, it sounds like someone's crying over there. But come back and be me instead of being home and wondering if I could have done it, right? So, and it kind of goes back to just me being me, that whole conversation we had a few minutes ago where it's like you have to be yourself. And so I learned for me to be internally happy and wanting to move forward, I like shop time. I like hunting. I like hanging out with my family. You know, like I figured out these things I like. And I have to make time, or I need to make time with them, with all those things in order to be content with myself. And and I love shoeing horses. I love going to work every day. So I think what it came down to was that knowing, like say I go to Madison and something shitty happens. I burn up in both classes and I don't even make the freaking shoeing. Well, I know when I come home, my wife's still gonna love me. My kid's gonna be happy to see me. I'm gonna be able to get in the shop and I'll probably get top 5 in Edgewood. You know, if I practice hard enough. And
rebound.
And just being able to look at the things you get to do instead of the things you could have done. And it took me a long time to be able to see that. You know, we get to be awesome forgers. We get to, you know, and some might argue we were born to do it, but we still get to do it. And that's something not everybody gets to do. You know, we get to hunt cool country because we get to do it. And not everybody gets to do that. Not everybody even knows. Like when you look at our country right now, there's millions of people that haven't even gone out of a city block.
It's crazy.
You know, they don't even know how to experience anything. We get to experience things like getting to go to Madison, Wisconsin and seeing thunder snow. You know, we get to experience that stuff. And instead of being depressed because I didn't do bad, it's like now I've reached the point in my life where it's like, you know, you need to be grateful for the fact you got to be there. You know, you got to be there. And maybe you didn't have the contest you wanted to have, but you still got to be there.
Yep.
And it is awesome when the people around you want to see you succeed.
It's a good way to look at it. I remember you telling me a couple of years ago, I think you had told me you shoe all your horses with handmaids, right?
Not anymore. I did
not
for
anymore.
a while. I did for a while, but now most of my horses wear between 13 and 14 and a half of 3/8x1, and I'm not quite that man anymore.
Not hand making them.
So I still make quite a few. I make a lot of concave and some plain stamps and some 3/4 fullers. Like I've been making a lot since I jumped on that classic team, and a lot more than I normally do. But I put a lot of concave on the back of horses, and then a lot of plain stamps and 3/4 fullers on the front. And like I shoe a handful of mules, so I've had to hand make their shoes. So that's been fun because they don't. Yeah, I used to use those St. Croix mule shoes; those bolted right on. Then they quit making them. So I had to find some 3/8, 5/8 concave, and it's been fun making those little guys. But yeah, so I don't hand make everything, but I still make quite a few.
Was it a hard adjustment to go from using keg shoes every day to now deciding I'm going to do all handmaids and shoe?
Well, at that time, I was so hell bent on being like as good of a competitor as I could be. It didn't matter to me. I would come home and I'd make 6 or 7 pairs of concave shoes. I was nailing on a lot of concave at that time. And then I'd practice, and then I'd spend all day Saturday and Sunday when I wasn't off practicing with someone else, just making shoes for my truck. I just make up shoes for my truck, and because I don't really like making shoes at the horse, and so I'd just keep the rig stocked, and I wouldn't make my aluminums. I'd always buy my aluminums, but I'd make some aluminums, but not only a handful of aluminums. But and the one thing I have to say, like I hear a lot of guys like talking about hand making all their shoes, and then you ask them how many horses they're shoeing, and they'll say 300 horses, and that's where I was at when I was hand making all my shoes. And I do know for a fact I created a lot of bad habits trying to keep up with hand making all those shoes. So if I
trying to do that, man.
One thing I would encourage, if you're going to hand make all your shoes, don't have 300 horses on your books. Like new guys getting into the business, or a guy like even in my position, I really could hand make all mine if I really wanted to, because I've got a good amount. They all reset, and like I said, a lot of them I do have handmaids on them, but it's like you don't want to be in a position where you're trying to keep 300 horses on a 6-week book and hand making them all.
Yeah, so with that number of horses, like, because you always get asked this question, like, have you ever tried doing all handmaids? Was it worth it? How do you do it? What did you find from it so you're doing 300 horses or whatever? Was it worth it?
Oh, yeah.
What
Yeah,
were the benefits, and what were some of the things that hindered you or that weren't beneficial?
Well, I think that one thing it was worth is it taught me efficiency in the
Mm-hmm.
forge. You know, it taught me how to run a coke forge because I'd make a lot of them out of my coke forge.
Yep.
And you know, and it just teaches a work ethic. Like it's, you know, if you spend 2 hours just making shoes for your truck, then it's not a big deal to spend a couple more hours practicing. And then if you don't have to make shoes for your truck, you're stoked because you got those 4 hours to practice for the contest, you know. But
Yep.
the one, like I said, the one thing that was looking back on my own experience with it was I know I created Tyson cakes, right? And looking back at those Tyson cakes, they weren't that great, you know,
A Tyson
because
cake.
like you know what I mean? Like they were handmade, but they were made by Tyson.
Yeah.
They all had the same shape, you know,
I see.
and
Yeah.
they all had the same problem and same
Same
fucked
toe.
up toe. You know, it's like they all, because I was trying to make concave in 2 heats because I had to make so many of them. And so, you know, looking back, I think it'd have been better if I'd have just taken the time to be like, okay, I'm going to make half of them for tomorrow in concave and try to do, or in handmaids, whatever they were going to wear, and just try to make sure they were all, you know, made well instead of just trying to stock the truck, because I was just trying to stock the truck.
So did you just make like a decision one day, I'm going to change and they're all going in handmaids from here on out? Or did you kind of like
I wanted to
gradually go into that?
No, I went right to it. I was like, I think that's, you know, to me, it was like, it's a rite of passage. If you're going to do it, you got, you know, it's like you look at the guys I admired at the time, Travis Coons, Craig, Chris Madrid, you know, like they were all making handmaids, all of them making handmaids. And I was like, well, and all the guys I wanted to become, they all made handmaids for their horses. So I was like, well, then that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. You know, but then look at, you know, talk to those guys now. They weren't shoeing that many horses, you know, and no excuse. It's not an excuse, but it just, like, if there is someone listening to this that's shoeing 350 or 300 horses and trying to do handmaids on all their horses, take a second and look at your shoes.
Yeah.
You know, and if they are great, if they're badass, then good for you. I wasn't able to make badass shoes for 350 horses. I thought I was, but looking
first
back,
cycle would have been brutal.
Well, I always try to lead with that when people ask me if I use all handmaids. I'm like, listen, I have barely any horse. Like, I'm probably considered a part-timer. So, like, it's pretty easy for me to like keep up with this demand. It's not a whole bunch here. Like, but I noticed the same thing that you were saying is like I was making shoes, all my shoes just in the shop and then putting them in the rig. And I was just like, you kind of just force them on. You know what I mean? You were kind of just like getting to that point of like, you could get them on there. Compared to when you built the shoe like at the horse or just for that horse.
Fits up.
You kind of made them more sweet.
Yeah. Like I did an eventer today. I made the shoes for the horse the other day, and they bolted right on. You know, and her feet aren't the greatest feet. Like they're all little cattywampus here. The quarters are a little off. So it's not like I just went in there and just made a shoe for the old table. You know, I had to think about her, and it like they bolted right on. So I was able to just be like, okay, those are her shoes. And that's how I make shoes now. Like this is for so-and-so. These are for so-and-so. Like when I, you know, it's like grab those ones because those are for that horse out of the truck, you know, and where before it was like their shoes were marked 12 inches, 12 and a half, 12 and a quarter,
exactly.
11 and a half. They weren't marked for, you know, for red down that, you know, red and stall number 3. You know, they were just sized. So.
And it's crazy though how much when you start making them for the horse, how much that helps you at competitions, because it is of like a lot of competition live shoeing things or even like classic. You aren't making table shoes. It comes down to those like, well, how can you make a late medial quarter look good? On the day. And if you only practice nice table shoes, like you're just not going to make that odd shaped foot look flowy and nice.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, you know, and also competing teaches you how to make those look nice, but how to be able to hide them too, you know, like. to where
you
it
find the
doesn't look
happy
like,
medium with them.
yeah, you find that medium where it's not all racked and late, where you're able to forge a shoe to where it still looks nice and somewhat symmetrical on the bottom of the foot, even though it's as asymmetrical as it gets, but you're able to kind of hide it and keep that foot nice and strong.
Yep.
You know?
Oh, those are honestly some of my favorite at competitions. Is like when there's like so many dimensions to it. You like look at it from the bottom. You're like, all right, there's that. You look on the top. You're like, dude, he hid the crap out of this. Like it looks really sweet. You know, like you saw it before, and you're like, there's no way it's gonna look nice, and they just come out looking like crackers. Like, I always think is like that guy probably has really nice feet every day. Just on his everyday horses, he gets them to this sweet zone and blended them in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's the point, is to have sweet feet every day.
Yeah.
That's why I got into it, is trying to create sweet feet every day. So
did you notice a change like with your pocketbook? Like did it save you any money, or did it cost you more money? And
I not really. You know, it did a little bit, but not much. Not much. I'm big into keeping the numbers right. I love my business. Like I want my business to be successful. The reason I shoot horses is for money. You know, I love shooting horses, but that's why we all do it. It's to get a check. You know, and so I'm big on my bottom line, and where I like, you know, like I have a certain goal, like I like to make every day. And if I'm going to get my truck, I'm going to make this much money today. And when I got my help, it's going to be this much money today. And I'll set my schedule up for that. And so at that time, I really wasn't as keen onto it, but I know that it was not really that much. I really didn't save a whole lot, and I know it's because I was shoeing so many horses. Like, one of the craziest things that ever happened to me is when we bought this place, I went from shoeing 350 horses, because when I was like, I didn't know any different than shoeing that many horses, 300 to 400 horses, and because of how I grew up, and I was doing that when I was all that competing time. Even when I was on the AFT, I was doing that. And so when we bought this place, the first thing I did was cut half of them out. I was like, I bought my place. I showed all that income. I know I can get rid of all of them, you know? And I did get rid of a lot of them. And in 2022, I was shoeing half probably the lowest number of horses I've ever shot in my whole career. And I made more money than I've ever made. And so, but I was paying attention to my business, you know, the type of horses I was shoeing, what I was charging, you know, my overhead. And when you don't shoe so many horses, you don't have to buy so much shit. And like my business is real. Like I order all my stuff in, and it's like just the same stuff. I don't order a bunch of little things, you know, like it's the same brand of horseshoe that comes every time. And, you know, I use the same aluminum shoes and the same cake shoes, you know, and that's all I've gotten real minimal on my inventory. And, and I think because of that, it's helped me make more money, because I haven't had to have, you know, all these different kinds of therapeutic shoes in the truck, thankfully, because of competing and learning to make shoes. You know, I can, if I got a crazy shoe I got to make, I can just make it instead of ordering some $80 aluminum shoe from the store. Like, you know.
So when you went and you cut half those number of horses, did you like immediately like raise your rates then?
That's how I cut them. I just raised my rates.
Okay.
And then some I had to cut because I did not want to shoe for them anymore, because I was like, oh, for sure, this will cut them. And then they still wanted to keep me around. And then there's that old adage that you just charge them till you like them. Well, those people I did not want to charge until I liked, so I just had to tell them something else. And so, because that's pretty much what I did. I took my business, was like, I'm going to charge them till I like. And I was fortunate enough that most of them wanted to keep me around. Like that deal they talk about, when you raise rates 10%, you're going to lose 10% of your business, and then you're still going to be making more money is true. At least every time I've raised my rates, that's exactly what's happened. And
that's the debate always.
Yeah. And, and I'm fortunate where I live because I grew up around here. Everybody knows me. So, I mean, I've never even had a business card made or done any sort of advertising around here. And, and it's just, I've always been around. So I've always got work, and, and I try not to take that for granted. And, like the one thing that I like to think of now, like I got my business in a place where I can give my clientele the feeling that I can take the time that their animal needs if they need it. I don't need to roll in because I got 15 more horses to shoe. And there's a lot of businesses like that. So, and I charge premium for my work. And I think that they're more comfortable paying me that because they know if I have to, I'll spend a couple hours. But they also know if I don't have to, I'm in and out. Gone,
Yeah.
But they're not getting me cut any corners. I'm just going to be efficient,
Your mental state of mind probably just has to be at more of an ease as well, knowing like you don't have to go shoot 300 horses.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's what makes it fun to practice, there's I mean, I'm not Superman, and there's a lot of guys tougher than me. I'm sure there are, but I know that I wouldn't have been able to keep that up for years, all the practice I was doing and shoeing all those horses, because I loved it. I loved shoeing all those horses. Then I'd practice till midnight, and I'd get up at 4 o'clock and do it all over again. And then I'd go one weekend to Travis Coons, and then the next weekend I'd go to Chris Madrid's and practice. And I'd only be shoeing horses 4 days a week and shoeing all those horses and practicing. I'd just do it and do it and do it. And I knew I wasn't the only guy doing it. There's a lot of guys out there doing it. And, I, like right now where I'm at, like I'm happy shoeing, knowing I can come home, spending a couple hours with the kid, and then go spend a couple hours in the shop. Like spend a couple hours with the wife. I can watch her ride one of her horses if I want, and then go spend some time in the shop. Like it's nice not having to really have everything like, okay, well, this is how much time I've got, so I need to make sure I get it all done. And
right.
So, and I even do a 5 week on, take my 6th week off thing, and that's been awesome too. That's been real awesome because then you have you can go to the hardware store on Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And doing stuff like that's pretty nice, really. And I didn't ever get to experience any of that because I just thought I had to shoe 350 head of horses.
It's unreal.
So, yeah. And,
it's something I don't discourage though. If like young guys talking, it's like if you're young and you don't really have like a family or anything, like even if you have a girlfriend or a fiance, that's okay. But like work a bunch at that time. So then when you're older, you're not wishing you had like, oh, I wish I could do this or I have this skill level. It's like, well, if you kind of took care of it when you were younger, now you don't have to work as hard at it, and you can kind of just like hang out with the family a little bit more, and enjoy some other things.
Well, I agree with you 100%. I think if you're young, you need to work as much as you can. Because I know that when I was 26, 27, I was making a lot of money shoeing horses. I was getting flown places to shoot horses. And I didn't have a family, and I do not have a thing to show for it. Because I was just partying. I was doing, buying crap I didn't need to buy, But the one thing I do, because you try to find something out of all of it, is I learned how to work. Again, I came up from it, but say I didn't. Say I got out of shoeing school at 21, and I got thrown into work with someone like that. It would have taught me how to work. How to get up and go to work, because that's the thing. I did party a lot, but I still got up and I still went and shot horses, because that's, that's what my dad taught me. I would party in high school, and it didn't matter how crappy I felt. I still got up and shot horses. I didn't get
There's this saying that I was taught: party like a man, work like a man.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You're going to party hard, you better work hard.
Yeah. And I can't say I don't know how well I do that anymore, but
it's
I had
hard.
to do it when I was young.
It's so hard.
And that's it. Like, I was fortunate enough to be around some businessmen. I should have handled everything a lot better than I did back then. But like, again, it's everything happens when it happens. And I would encourage, like, horseshoers. Whenever I hear a horseshoer is broke, it's really crazy for me to understand that, because I've been broke, but I know why I was broke. And it wasn't because I wasn't getting money from shoeing horses.
Yeah, exactly.
And, it's like, if I would have just taken the time to invest money where I should have invested money back then. And I mean, I was making money head over heels. Like, I could be close to retirement right now.
It's crazy.
And it's crazy to think about. Fortunately, I pulled my head out of my ass. I'm doing all right. But it's like, the young guys that are shoeing horses, think about what you're doing with your money. I'm not, you can't take it with you when you die, but there's no reason to be a bum. You can enjoy some of the finer things in life because you're making the kind of money to enjoy some of the finer things in life.
Yeah.
Getting to go to contests and stuff like that. Yeah. So
hindsight is always 20/20.
No, just be smart with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hindsight's always 20/20, but you learn a lot in hindsight.
Oh, you do, because then when it comes to the future and those situations come up again, you're like, I'm still regretting the last time I did this. I think I'm going to go ahead and pass.
Yeah.
It's not that good of a deal.
Yeah.
Right. You got to touch the hot stove yourself a couple times.
Well, Tyson, the tough question that we like to ask here on the Forge and Brains podcast is the Mount Rushmore. So we want to ask you, who are 4 people that you hold in a high regard that have kind of gotten you to where you're at?
So Nolan Ryan's one. Nolan Ryan's definitely someone on my Mount Rushmore. Like, that man did more for baseball than anybody's ever done, and he did it at an older age too. Like, I've got a picture of him in my shop, he's the true definition. If you love something, you're gonna do it, and he's a family man. He's badass. Like, he lived his life to his potential and still is. And so Nolan Ryan's definitely one. Teddy Roosevelt's got to be another.
Wow.
And because he's done more. He's made sure I can hunt. He made sure I can hunt. And so yeah, he's definitely another. And I think that Jim Keith for sure is on there, because you could pretty well argue that Jim Keith was the top of the triangle that brought all the great ones down that have taught us. So yeah, Jim Keith for sure. And gosh dang, who would be my 4th? Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know who my 4th would be.
It's hard, man. It's a hard one.
Yeah, it's hard.
You can always leave. Gavin still hasn't given us his 4th one.
Yeah. Oh, he hasn't. He still hasn't given me the 4th one, huh?
No. You can be left open there.
So who, like, I wouldn't necessarily say it's just one person, but I've really fallen deep, like that whole cliche that the middle-aged white man, when they turn 40, they either buy a motorcycle or they get into history. Well, I've gotten into history. Yeah. And I've currently been stuck in World War II, and I've been doing a lot of World War II stuff, and I've really fallen into how the whole World War II played out, and there's a great series on Apple TV called Masters of the Air, and it's about the Bloody 100th, and it's the B-17s and 15s that had to go in there and drop the bombs to be able to make it so that we could even get onto land. Yep. In Europe, in Western Europe. And so I'd say the fourth guy would probably be just, I would argue probably the last men. I mean, there's still some men in America, but those men back in the 30s and 40s in America were more man than any. Like they were as man as and proud to be who they were than almost in history anybody's ever been. Like you could argue they put the Romans to shame on their pride and their willingness to die for their cause.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that'd probably be, the fourth is just those guys because they've set the stone for the rest of us. They laid that road for the rest of us so that we could keep on paving.
Dude, that's a great Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. Like there's the reason we're here is because of everybody before us. Yep. And I think I love that question because I bet, I can't speak for everybody, but I think it's pretty easy to get caught up on the four guys that we currently look up to as, right now. Well, he's back. And, so that's, the four. And so I think I look back at the guys that are, I love it.
They cleared the path for us. It's the only reason we can have the path.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they did.
It's something to remember all the time. And I try to keep it in mind in just my day-to-day things that are not working for yourself and working for your future great grandchildren. Like if you fuck some stuff up today, they might not have it. So try to keep that path open and not fuck it up and don't be selfish about it. It's not ours. It's just our turn.
Yeah, it's our turn to be in it. And then all we can do is just try to do the best we can and, stand with pride.
Man, I really, really, really thank you for taking time, Tyson. Obviously, you're a busy guy, but I think there's some great knowledge in these for the people to listen to, even new guys and guys that have been doing this for a while, but how to kind of be self-accountable.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Good luck in Madison.
Seeing you down the road. Yeah, I'm going to need it. I'm going to need it. Everybody is, I think. So it's going to be good.
Kick some ass, man.
Appreciate it. Have fun.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Later.